Hello, I'm Aren. In this video I will tell you about the 11 deadliest epidemics in history. 11. HIV, AIDS. Virus. The first detectable example of the HIV virus, which was understood to have passed from apes to humans in the mid-20th century, was seen in the Congo in 1959. However, he was diagnosed and named only in the 1980s. There is still no solution that can definitively cure the virus, which has cost the lives of 36 million people in the last 30 years. It is only necessary to take precautions and to use lifelong drug therapy after getting the disease. 10. 1957 Asian flu pandemic. It is thought that the influenza A virus, which started in China, is a disease that mutates in ducks and is transmitted to humans. The disease, known as the Asian flu, claimed the lives of nearly 4 million people. The epidemic was prevented with a vaccine found to be the same. 40 million people were vaccinated in 1 year. The Asian flu has become one of the most important examples showing the importance and impact of mass vaccination. 9. 1918 Spanish flu pandemic. In the years following the First World War, the H1N1 influenza virus, which infected 500 million people, caused the death of 50 to 100 million healthy people worldwide with the high fever it caused. This number is many times higher than the sum of the number of people who died in the First and Second World Wars. What distinguished this virus from the others was that the stronger the immune system of the body it attacked, the higher the fever. The Spanish flu was recorded as one of the worst disasters in history. 8. Typhus epidemic. During the First World War, the epidemic caused by lice carrying typhus bacteria between 1914 and 1918 was a phenomenon brought about by the war. In Europe and Asia, 25 million people fell ill and nearly 3 million people died, especially in the Soviet Union countries. Western countries understood more quickly what caused the epidemic and measures were taken to get rid of lice. Eastern countries, on the other hand, took action later, and therefore much more people died in this part of the world. 7. Third plague epidemic. This epidemic, which started in China between 1855 and 1859, spread to the world and caused the death of 12 million people even in China and India alone, was called the Third Plague, after the Justinian Plague and the Black Plague of Europe. The epidemic, the effects of which lasted for a century, was carried to the American continent by mice from the Far East. Unlike previous plagues, advanced medical science allowed the study of this disease and the creation of therapeutic drugs. Antibiotics were among them. 6. 7 different cholera epidemics. There have been 7 major cholera epidemics in our civilization's history, but the deadliest was the third, which occurred between 1852 and 1860. The main cause of cholera was the contamination of drinking water, but this was not understood until the third epidemic. For long periods, human excreta and waste also spilled into water sources used for drinking and cooking. The place where this became a great disaster was India at that time. Even today, the Ganges River, one of the world's most polluted rivers, contains 1.1 billion fecal bacteria per 100 milliliters, according to a 2011 study. This rate is 500,000 times the rate that can be accepted to be in the worst water you can wash in. Hindus believe that bathing in this river is sacred and they make maximum use of the river water in their daily work. For this reason, cholera is a common disease in this region. However, with the great epidemic in the 19th century, cholera spread all over India, from there to Afghanistan and Russia. According to official records, the epidemic, which caused the death of 1 million people even in Russia alone, reached Europe and Africa, and finally America. 1 in 5 people infected with cholera have dangerous diarrhea. Half of these people die if they are not treated quickly. Although the total number of people who died in the 7 cholera epidemics is not known exactly, it is possible to express this in millions. With the third epidemic, doctors found the cause of cholera, and after that date, the knowledge that drinking water should be purified and boiled became widespread in the world. 5. Coca-Cola outbreaks. The epidemic disaster that occurred in the 16th century when several different diseases occurred in the region called New Spain, which is today's Mexico, are known as Coca-Cola epidemics. As a result of the examinations made today, it is thought that the epidemics, which are thought to be caused by the Salmonella bacteria found in fish, killed a total of 15 million people between 1520 and 1576. It was the beginning of the end for the Mayan civilization and spread from today's Venezuela to Canada over the years. 4. Native American encounters with chickenpox. In the 15th century, Europeans discovered the New World. European explorers, who came into contact with the natives of the Americas, transmitted the viruses and bacteria they brought with them to the people here. Chickenpox had already killed a third of Europe, but Native Americans, whose immune systems were as underdeveloped and under-medicated like the Europeans, didn't stand a chance. Millions of people died and 90% of the indigenous population was wiped out at that time. This situation greatly facilitated the colonization of the Americas by the Europeans. Up until the beginning of the 19th century, a total of 1 in 2 Native Americans died from diseases from Europe. 3. Black Plague. The Black Plague, which occurred between 1346 and 1353, is thought to have killed between 75 and 200 million people. Although it is not possible to know the exact numbers, it is stated that the population of Europe has decreased by 30 to 60% in these years. It is known that the Black Plague epidemic, which caused the questioning of God and the Church in the society after the massacre, was one of the main reasons for the reform of religion and the beginning of the Renaissance in many areas of life. 2. Plague of Justinian. In 541, while Emperor Justinian was sitting on the throne in Constantinople, an epidemic that started in Europe first reached Egypt, then Palestine, Syria, and then Anatolia. Although Justinian closed all entrances and exits to Constantinople, the epidemic entered the city through rats, which were among the materials brought to the city by the military units. A volatile insect called Xenocilla, smaller than a millimeter and hidden among the feathers of mice, carried the deadly plague bacterium called Pastorella pesti in its stomach. These insects flew and settled among the hairs of other mice in the environment and reproduced rapidly. Insects transmitting the plague microbe by placing and biting any part of the human body caused the people they infected to die within a few days. Within a week, the plague spread rapidly in the city and the deaths began. The surroundings of the palace were quarantined by the military units. The death toll, which was initially a few hundred per day, soon reached thousands. When the burial places were full, the dead began to be thrown into the sea. The disease continued its normal course and disappeared on its own in time, but by that time, Constantinople, one of the most populated cities of the period, lost 40% of its population. The epidemic caused Byzantium, which lost its workforce and number of soldiers, to weaken and became vulnerable to attacks, which led to developments that radically changed the history of Europe. 1. Antoninus, Galen. Epidemic. Antoninus plague, an epidemic disease that lived in the Roman Empire between 165 to 180 AD and was brought by soldiers returning from Eastern expeditions, is one of the first known major plague epidemics that caused the death of 2,000 people a day. While researchers suspected it was smallpox or measles, the true cause remains unclear. While the epidemic caused the death of Roman emperors Lucius Verus and Marcus Aurelius Antoninus, the empire lost 30% of its total population.